Welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. This episode we have Corey Wencl, who is an athletic trainer at UW-La Crosse with us and also does some physician extending in the area as we've continued to develop that role and what that can entail. We actually talked to Corey about all the different roles that he's been in, working at both small and large high schools, transitioning to the collegiate setting, how things have had to change in terms of his rehabilitation techniques, how he manages things, kind of the triage that goes into all those different areas. Corey provides a lot of great insight when it comes to those things. And if you're looking at going into a high school or you're potentially there and maybe struggling because the high school is big, he offers some pretty unique insight into how to manage that. Along with that, Corey has been in the athletic training profession for over a decade now and just has seen a lot and has brought a lot of valuable assets to UWL that we highly appreciate, and we look forward to seeing where things go in the future. Check out this episode with Corey Wencl. Okay, let's get started. Welcome to this episode of AT Chat. We are sitting here in, we'll call it a lab in Mitchell Hall that got kind of created out of nothing, but it works out for the time being. We'll have to, if you're watching the video, you can see all the coolers and whatnot in the background. It's kind of a catch-all storage, but we are here with Corey Wencl, who is an athletic trainer, obviously, kind of the point of the show, but we've gotten to work with Corey for the past, we'll call it 3 years, because it's basically going to be that by the when it's all said and done. I think we personally got extremely lucky with Corey coming over. It's actually kind of a funny story to a degree on how that all worked out, but yeah, we're going to talk to Corey today about all the different clinical experiences he's had and just how that's adopted, or how he's adopted what he does to that, from working at a pretty big high school to working with just a single team to doing all the stuff that he does in the clinic. So without further ado, Corey, you want to give some just background for the people?
Sure. Graduated in May of 2006 from Winona State University with a bachelor's degree in exercise science with an emphasis in athletic training. From there, my first job out of school was over in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, working with Agnesian Healthcare, covering mainly Fond du Lac High School as well as Oakfield High School, which, if any of you know Fond du Lac and Oakfield High School, polar opposites in terms of size. Fond du Lac very big, one of the bigger schools in the state of Wisconsin, and Oakfield probably one of the smallest.
I actually stumbled upon a blog article Corey wrote when he was at that position.
Yep.
We'll definitely link that up. It was good. I liked it.
So I was there for about 10 years or so, give or take. Then I believe in, would have been 2015, 2016, I think, October. Yeah. Ended up coming over to University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, which the reason that I had come over here, my wife actually had been given a great career opportunity, but the position that she was offered was not within driving distance, we'll say, to Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. It would have been about a 3-hour drive one way for her to get to work every day. So because she had made the trip for me over to the other side of the state, I said, hey, if this is that good for you, then let's go ahead and get it done. And I was there for her. Luckily for me, this position at UW-La Crosse was open,
and we were desperate to fill it. We were hoping to find someone and not having much luck.
Before I was going back and forth probably for a week, like, I don't really know if I want a part-time gig. I kind of just...
Well, and it was classified as research intern, so you didn't actually have any idea what it was.
That kind of threw me for a loop, too. Like, man, I really don't know if I want to be doing a whole lot of research, and if that's really what this is, then I'm going to be doing a complete 180 from what I'm doing. But I applied anyways, just because couldn't be over in Fond du Lac with my wife and my son over here in La Crosse.
Which isn't a plethora of AT positions on the regular. There's
Right.
a lot of ATs, but they don't always open up.
Right, and it just being October, it's if you know the profession at all, it's not a time of the year to be looking for jobs.
Right.
Usually things are set in stone, and you kind of go from there. And positions generally don't open up until late spring, early summer. So it wasn't a great time to be looking for job opportunities, but applied, was hired, started. I think my first day was Halloween.
As I say, it was right around November 1, I remember.
Yep. I think it was October 31st, now that I remember, because I know it was right at...
We covered women's basketball by committee.
Yep.
Until you got here.
Yep. So got here, was working with primarily women's hoops that first year, helped out a little bit with football. The following fall, that spring as well, and kind of the rest is history, I guess. Been working with those two sports ever since. About a year ago, started working as a physician extender with our team physician in clinic. So I've been kind of doing a little bit of everything from when I first started from now to the present time.
So I guess that would be my first big question on it is I have only worked with a specific team in my career, dedicated to one team, never in a high school setting. And the one time high school rotation I had, it was very quiet, so it wasn't the influx where you could actually spend some time with people. I can only imagine, because how big is Fond du Lac? How many athletes do you think they got to have?
Probably close to 500 athletes, give or so.
I was going to imagine it was that much. Just how do you triage that? And still, do what you would deem a good job, and knowing you and your affinity for rehab.
It's very, very difficult at times. There's never really a time of year where things are slow, that's for sure. But you do what you can. You try and treat every individual as though so every individual that comes in, you're trying to give them the best care possible, regardless of what they're doing or what their story is or anything. But it's trying to be very efficient with your time. I was lucky enough that when I was at that school over in Fond du Lac, I was lucky enough that administration kind of supported me coming in that last hour of their school day. Certain kids would have study hall, certain kids would have a senior release period or whatever.
Right.
That we could get a lot of that work done during that last hour of classes, and then they would get to practice on time. And then, with there being limited gym space at every school, here's no different. You have three boys teams and 3 girls teams trying to practice in the gym all at the same time. It doesn't really work that well. So generally it's broken up. Teams will go early, and then other teams will go late. So that kind of helps break up when everybody's practicing. The times where it gets really tough would be the fall and spring, because everybody's either outside if weather permits, or everybody's inside if the weather doesn't cooperate. So those are really the trying times where it seems like everybody just needs things right away. It kind of helps with when you have teams that are on the road. They generally leave early before that last bell sounds, so you can get a lot of them taken care of and out the door before the rush comes in. It kind of helps, I guess, helps you triage the rush and knowing what's going to be coming in. And then it never seems to fail. There's always a curveball that's thrown in that some kid gets hit in the head during that last period gym class that, you got to go help out with that. But it's definitely very fast paced, and you're never bored at a school the size of Fond du Lac.
Yeah, I got so many specific questions, but so did you ever try and go I don't know if templated is the right word, but kind of standardized maybe is a better word, rehab type things, just because of the difficulty. and that you can transition this even into like now where women's basketball is a group of 18,
Right.
and you've got at least 2, if not more, athletic training students with it. So the ratio obviously gets down where, changing up treatment plans and rehabs on a whim isn't a big deal.
Right.
But in something like that, I could only imagine, the organization of it and the documentation, which was kind of another part of that question. But like, my mind just starts spinning trying to think about like, are you handing kind of a standardized plan out that's maybe not the same thing every day, but at least is to a degree in order to try and make your life a little easier? Or?
Yeah, so a lot of what I would do, and we'll just throw out an ACL injury, and with me there were a couple seasons there where it was rough going. For our athletes, I just had a lot that I was working with in terms of knee issues and whatnot. But it would kind of be taking those individuals through those standard exercises, what I would want them to do every day. They would come in, and I would just be able to say, yep, let's do your standard, we'll just say, call them hip exercises, whatever that might be every day. And then once they're done with that, I would generally have them, if I wanted to work with them in more of a focused one-on-one type of setting, I would get through my rush, which would, anywhere from a half an hour to an hour and a half, just depending on how the time of year and everything. They would go and kind of be at practice doing whatever they were able to do. And then when I was free, I would come and get them, and I would take them through a little bit more structured, focused exercise instruction, or whatever that was for that day. And in that, it wasn't necessarily writing out like here in the SBC, you have structured lifting programs that are written out for every athlete well in advance. It was very much so, okay, what does this week look like for you? Working with any physical therapist that they may be seeing for said condition too, because working at a high school, you can't do everything at the school yourself. Right. It's just not possible. And just knowing when to send this person to therapy or that person to therapy, or to see this physician or that physician, and really balancing that, and then working with those other healthcare professionals, I think was kind of what helped me help, again, back to the whole triage everything and how you go through things on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So I just got a quick question. So with all this going on, did you ever have like students come from like either high school programs or colleges in the area?
So I did have. There were always high school kids that were interested in athletic training and would spend more time in the training room. They really didn't get to do a whole lot of much of anything. I think they were more or less there for maybe the social atmosphere at sometimes. But nevertheless, had at least expressed an interest in it, and if nothing else, we would be talking about anatomy stuff and everything with them that they might be learning in school and everything. And a few of the comments are, that they've just learned so much more just in regards to anatomy that they just didn't necessarily get that level of it going through classes. But so when I was over in Fond du Lac, I was actually a preceptor for UW-Oshkosh as well. So I had a couple of students come down from there that I was working with and everything. So that was only for maybe a season or two, and then it generally would kind of die down. And just with the way that the environment and everything in the training room, I had kind of stopped doing that. It just wasn't a great learning environment at that point, and they had closer schools where it wasn't a 15 to 20-minute drive for those students to come down and essentially spend the gas money to come all the way down. They'd get the same experience right up in Oshkosh, because we were a couple of bigger schools up there too that they could do clinical rotations and everything at. So it wasn't always me working with each individual athlete, but I would say probably 95% was me directly working with them every day. Yeah.
Wow.
So how has that shifted, working with a team of 18?
Oh, man. Well, I actually know everybody's name on the team, which is a plus. It only takes me about a week to really know everybody with the new freshmen and everything coming in versus in when I was covering high school, it seemed like, yeah, you knew names of quite a few kids, but a lot of them, and just the way that my brain works is you get to know injuries,
Right.
and then the kids, because everybody knows who you are, but you don't necessarily know everybody by name. You get to know them by injury, which there were quite a few times where kids would come in and, man, they'd look so familiar, and I couldn't for the life of me remember their name. And then I would just out of the blue say, oh yeah, you had how's your ankle doing, or whatever that we were working
Right.
on, last season or whatever. And they're like, oh, you actually remember that? And I was like, yeah.
That's like the only way I get to know most of the new football guys, just because you don't interact with them directly.
Yep. And
And with their helmets on.
And I always, me personally, I felt bad for doing that, but I
Right.
always, made sure to let them know, hey, it's absolutely nothing. At that point, it's a me thing, and that's just how my brain works. And I get to know injuries really well. And there's so many of you every day. I'm seeing 60 kids after school. It's just very difficult, especially working with two schools and everything too. It's not always the same people every single day, which I
Right.
was lucky enough being at Fond du Lac. I was there after school 5 days a week, so that's kind of an anomaly covering high school athletics with a lot of, I guess, the bigger division schools. You'll get the 5 day a week coverage, but a lot of the smaller schools only get 2, maybe 3 days a week coverage. And like Oakfield, it was, covering their lunch hour just to check in with injuries and
Right.
help progress rehabs.
Yep.
And okay, this is what you got to do for the next couple of days, and then maybe get their home football games covered.
Right.
So very different in terms of what's covered and how much you can actually provide each athlete at each school. So, but yeah, working with a smaller team, it's definitely much easier to get to know them. One on a injury basis, but two on a personal basis too. You see the same group of 15 to 20 athletes on a day-to-day basis, and kind of get to know their story a little bit more too. So
I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because I forgot I had this in there. So you kind of referenced it, like it was an anomaly of being at the school 5 days a week, where some only get 2 or 3. I know my sister does that, where it's more of like she's driving around to like check in.
Yep.
In essence, I've seen, and you guys can comment on it, obviously, what you ever using to, just more and more about, like, there was an article, is not having an athletic trainer in high school is negligence. So kind of with that, like, is one ATC in high school enough? Like, at this point, is it becoming, like, the necessity, or does it need to be more? Like, what are your thoughts on it? Again, because I don't have any direct experience with it.
Yeah.
The one I did, that the girl that was there, the woman that was there daily as part of her thing, and covered pretty much every home event, I think.
Yeah. At different times of the year, I would say that one is sufficient. But again, there's those I'm only speaking because I was at Fond du Lac with them in the winter, having wrestling, boys basketball, girls basketball, hockey, both boys and girls hockey, like all of that's going on. And it's there would be some nights where there would be a home basketball event, a home hockey event, and home wrestling on the same night, all starting at the same time, all different venues. So I would argue that you need at least 3 to cover that sufficiently.
Right.
And then, oh, by the way, we would throw in a big home swim meet or whatever to try and just add more wrinkles and everything, and just things like that. One, from a triage standpoint, a day-to-day covering practice and everything, I think one is sufficient, but again, less than 5 day a week coverage, I don't think that's necessarily adequate. We made it work over in Fond du Lac. Actually, the majority of the schools that we covered through the clinic that I worked at actually got 2 to 3 day a week coverage. Fond du Lac was the outlier, and that they got 5 days a week. And then Oakfield was on the opposite end,
Right.
outlier, getting the lunch hour coverage, and then home football game coverage. But that was, when I was over there, that was kind of one of my goals, to kind of start moving towards it, eventually trying to just create other things that athletic trainers could do, and other opportunities for us, so that we could hire more staff and essentially put one person at each school, and then that wouldn't equate to 1.0 FTE,
Right.
and then we would just be able to play with hours, and they'd be doing other tasks and everything
Right.
for the organization and everything. That was the ultimate goal.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, it never really got the traction that I like to see or anything when I was over there. And I believe, just from my colleagues still working over there, I think it's roughly the same model as when I left. But yes, ultimately across the whole state, it would be ideal to have at least one at every single high school.
Yeah, that's
5 days a week. But
it's got to be hard, because, like you said, what do you do when you have the person that's there, but there's 3 events, plus there's the other school that you're trying to get from 2 to 3 days a week to 5 days, but they also got a bunch of events too.
Yep.
This is almost going to be like impossible to like even go through, but you almost have to hold like the organization to a degree. Is like, you guys, you can't schedule 7 things on the same night, but then at the same time, you probably also don't want to schedule one thing every night.
right.
And so
And we were
such a hard thing to balance. I ran into that even. We'd send people to 3 different locations for meets.
right.
Well, there's only 2 of us working with the team.
Yep.
The numbers don't work.
Right.
And you're sending an injured person
Yeah.
to each thing. Like, I don't know what you want. So.
Yeah, and from a scheduling standpoint, a majority of the time we were lucky enough that most of the schools that we covered all played in the same conference, so that helped from a scheduling standpoint.
For sure.
If the boys basketball team was over there, the girls basketball team was over here, and it just kind of worked out.
Or you could
but
just
there were
play back to back.
you could do that too, but again, with high school level, it's you have to remember that there's a freshman team, a JV team, and a varsity team, and all
Right.
3 of them have to play on the same
That's
night.
true. Yep.
And so that
Yep.
just creates other issues. Again, working at Fond du Lac, because of the anomaly, once in a while we would play a back-to-back with one of the Oshkosh schools. The boys and girls would both come down, or we would both go up. Because we had the gym space, we actually had a separate accessory gym that we would put the freshman games in. The JV games would be going on
Yeah, we played
before
at
the varsity
elementary
games.
school when I was
So,
back in the day.
but there were definitely times where it made scheduling very difficult. That would not be unheard of for us to have 14 events to try and cover between everybody. We did not have 14 staff
Right.
available to work, so it was getting kind of creative with coverage. Okay, this game starts early enough, you can cover this one, but then make it to this 7 o'clock game. So you end up making do with what you can, and once in a while you'd get late to an event, and you would let everybody know prior to that happening that might be the case. But as soon as you were there, then everything was, you'd take care of it at that time.
Right.
So.
Saying that kind of goes back to stuff we were learning about in class, where if you're at a high school where you aren't able to always have like an athletic trainer at every single event, having coaches at least like first aid, CPR certified.
It's the same thing we deal with here.
To be able to hold down the fort until you're able to like get there and someone contacts you.
Right.
So you make things work.
Right. And if anything is really ever truly that bad, there's, other than having the medical degree there, there's not much more that I'm going to do that a coach can't do other than call 911 and get that ball rolling and everything.
Unfortunately, I think that gets forgotten sometimes. Like, I'm not trying to belittle what we do, because obviously I think we do quite a bit. But if somebody sprains an ankle and you're not there, like, I get it. It sucks and it hurts, and all the different things. But the odds of that going significantly sideways and going very, very terrible are pretty small. And while yes, it's not perfect, it's also not the complete and utter end of the world,
Right.
which I think sometimes is lost. Yeah. Kind of transitioning to the latest part of your career, physician extending. I think, in my knowledge of it, it's been something that's been coming along for a while. You did some of that in Fond du Lac too.
We were trying to get that.
We're working
that
on
was
that
one
model.
of the things that we were trying to get that model going. We had orthopedic support and everything, and just for whatever reason the wheel stopped turning, and we didn't really have a whole lot of traction. Just as a way to find other things for athletic trainers to be able to do for the organization, just because we can do so many things. But that ultimately it didn't get there when I was over there.
So what do you see as some of the biggest benefits to having athletic trainers in that role that you, A, were trying to implement, B, are currently implementing, and C, just kind of where you think it could potentially go?
I mean, there's a lot that we can do, and just making processes more efficient. Just our thought process in general is very much so that of an orthopedic trained physician. So having us in that physician extender type of role, we're operating on the same wavelength essentially, and we can talk the same language and work through the same stuff. We can offload those tasks for the physician that isn't necessarily, and I don't want to say that they're beneath a physician to do, but a physician could be doing things that are more beneficial to the clinic from a billing standpoint, and
trying to
everything,
optimize
making money.
the process.
Right. And just making things, I guess, more streamlined, and that effect, to be able to very efficiently see an individual, not be disrespectful of the patient's time when they're in seeing you in clinic. We're very fluent in the rehab side of things as well. So there's not many physician clinics that you would be able to essentially go to that they would in turn be able to get you the exact correct exercises for you to start working on said condition that you have. And that's just another thing that we bring to the table that I think like a medical assistant or anybody else that would be working in roles similar to that wouldn't be able to bring. I guess sorry, just trying to.
No, it just seemed like a deep thought.
No, trying to remember back to the original question, I guess. But just being able to essentially make things that much more efficient for everybody involved. It just allows the physician to see more individuals on a day-to-day basis versus seeing a full caseload being double booked throughout the day multiple times, and it doesn't even feel like you're double booked because it just things run so smooth. It is a big reason to have athletic trainers in working in the clinic directly with a physician.
Sounds good. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
You got anything else you want to?
No, I was going to say.
Oh, we've got more questions.
Oh no, I do like the fact that the physician day is very very much so structured. That you know that this patient is coming in at this time and this time and this time, and you can do your back end work and everything before they get there, and not knowing when everything is coming in and who's coming in with what, and that's a big difference. I
go back and forth on that.
Covering high school to college, and I mean, to some degree you know what's coming in, but you never really know when it's coming in, and it never fails that everybody's going to come in at the same time because everybody's friends outside of, and heaven forbid we travel to the athletic training room or athletic training center or whatever, individually, and plan ahead. It's definitely an afterthought, I feel sometimes, but
I enjoy the randomness of it because it always keeps it interesting, but at the same time it's just like when that happens, you're just like, holy hell,
Yeah.
how is this even a
Yep.
like how is this a thing?
I like both worlds. It's nice to
Right.
have that. It's nice to have that unstructuredness, not really knowing when it's going to happen, but it's also nice to be able to go and have that structure too.
Yeah, I can
So
see that. All right, the AT chat questions. I got on the first one. Malcolm, you got them memorized?
Couple of them.
Couple of them. So first one is, what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
being an athletic trainer to me means being able to help those individuals and specifically athletes, or now talking physician extender role patients that are in need, and really get them back to what they want to do. Whether that's on the athletic side, whether that's, get them better to the point that they can go and take their dog for a walk,
Right.
or whatever the case may
Play
be.
with their kids.
Right. That's really what it comes down to. And just to kind of piggyback on that, I'll never forget the first year that I was working in the high school, probably 3 games into our football season, starting quarterback goes down with a shoulder injury, and I'm sitting there, kind of panicking a little bit, new grad, doing it for the first time, like, oh man, how the heck am I going to tell coach he might not have his quarterback for next week? And whatever, started just working through everything during the week with him, and was able to get him to a point that he could throw a few of the passes. Luckily for us that we had a fairly decent team around him, that we didn't have to rely on him. But we were able to get him to a place that he could play and be functional playing. And so we, let him go. And so comes game day, and went through warm-ups, and I think the other team had the ball first. And as soon as we got the ball, like, he's standing right next to me, starts running out on the field, stops like 5 yards out on the field, turns around and comes walking back to me, and I'm just like, what's going on? Like, this isn't how it's
This
supposed
wasn't
to
part
go.
of the plan.
Yeah.
And he stuck his hand out and shook my hand and said thank you.
That's awesome.
Literally
Yeah.
all the extra work that I put in during the week just to try and get him to play. And from then on, every game that year, he thanked me before every single game, just
That's
because we
cool.
continued
Yeah.
to. And I will never forget it. And it's something so small, but it means so much
Right.
to know that they actually appreciate that
Mhm.
that much, instead of just, okay, I'm here to,
Right.
that's your job
Here,
to take
serve
care
me.
of me,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So, and I've had other athletes, in the past years that have done similar things
Right.
and whatnot. But being that happened the first year that I was doing it, I mean, it just definitely stuck with me
Cool.
ever since then. So, if you're watching the video, you know who you are.
So then, kind of segueing off that idea, what advice would you give yourself as a young athletic trainer?
So coming out of undergrad, I feel that every athletic trainer goes to this to some degree. I know I went through it. Again, I can't speak to everybody in the profession, but I think it's kind of standard practice is that you, now that you're off practicing on your own, without having to check in with anybody specifically, you almost feel an obligation to be able to figure everything out,
Mhm.
and you should know everything, so you should be able to get everybody better. Just knowing that you can't get everybody better, and knowing when to pull a trigger on, hey, this person's got to get seen, or they need more structured one-on-one, therapy or whatever that is. Just knowing that, and knowing that you can't save the world. You can do your part, but to work with everybody to get those athletes, those patients to where they want to be at. Doesn't just fall on your shoulders. And I know that there were plenty of times where I probably should have sent somebody in that I didn't. I mean, ultimately it worked out in the end anyways. But could have we gotten that individual there quicker if I would have sent them in? Maybe. And likewise, there probably are times where I've sent somebody in that didn't need to be sent in either. The street is a two-way street from that standpoint, but just kind of knowing where that fine line is and where to walk it, and how many people or who you're sending in or when to send those people in for additional help, because a lot of times just with their schedule and everything, it's not necessarily, especially working at a high school, it's not going to jive with yours, especially if it's, and we'll just take the spring season as an example, baseball, softball, rainouts and reschedules, well, everything gets pushed back to the last 3 weeks of the season, and now they're on the road for, you don't see them for 3 weeks, but they're still dealing with the said injury, whatever that may be. So that just makes it difficult to get them better, to treat them the way that they need to be treated. So at that point, it probably would have been more beneficial to that, we'll just call them a baseball player, to get that further medical attention than what you could provide them.
Mm-hmm.
Solid advice. What has been one of the most influential resources that you found in your career?
Oh, man. I don't have one
Such
specific.
a selfish question.
I don't have one specific individual resource. I would, if I were to say one specific, I would just, in general, say just all the colleagues that I've worked with, regardless of being over in Fond du Lac or here now at UW-La, everybody, orthopedic physicians, anybody, they've just always been there to bounce ideas off of, and open my eyes to things that I had never thought of in the past. Specific example of always at the high school level, you always throw ice on everything because that's what you have and that's the way of thinking. And then coming here, I mean, just working specifically with football, we don't really ice a whole lot of things. Well, why do you do that? And I honestly had never really thought about it until I got here. And now there's not a lot that I will throw an ice bag on, and it's, whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise, I mean, ultimately the individual gets to the end result with or without that bag of ice. It's just how do you go about getting them to that end result. So just in general, I would say all my colleagues being there to bounce ideas off of, whether it's the concussion athlete, the patient in the clinic, talking to an orthopedic physician, physical therapist, whatever the case may be. So not one specific individual, I guess more a collection of individuals.
So then kind of going off that, if you could eliminate one thing from the field of athletic training or change, whether it's like a modality or a common practice, what would it be?
I would say, and this kind of also piggybacks back to the advice to the young athletic trainer myself, if I could look back in the mirror, to just eliminate the 3 sets of 10 exercises. Like that, what is that? There's a time and a place for it, I get it, but are we really doing each individual athlete or patient any favors by just 3 sets of 10 and you'll be good? I would argue that we're really not, because we don't ever do that in the weight room. So if we're applying those strength and conditioning principles to strength, power, endurance, 1 rep max, all that stuff, if we're applying it to rehab, which I feel is what we should be doing, so I would get rid of that. Okay. And just to think about what the end result is supposed to be before you give the prescription of 3 sets of 10 for everything.
Yeah.
So, and yes, 3 sets of 10 is very easy for everybody to remember, athletes included, and sometimes you're running into the case where, man, I just don't know if they would be able to remember anything but 3 sets of 10, and that's okay too, but to be able to think about it more in depth, I guess, and really know what you're trying to get out of that.
Right, having the intention of what the goal is and how to get there.
Yep.
Yeah, yes. Last one, where do you see the athletic training profession going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Hopefully, the profession will at least open up, not the profession itself, but I guess healthcare, the delivery of healthcare, athletic training in general will be working more towards those untraditional or non-traditional settings. So physician extending in the clinic, industrial setting. There's a lot of things that we can do, and just throwing out the industrial setting and everything, making sure that ergonomics are efficient for everybody, that doing the same task every single day to help eliminate injury, setting up programs that people can essentially train their body to be able to do that task repetitively day in and day out and not get injured as a result. There's a lot of value in that. We did that to some extent over in Fond du Lac, but my hope is that athletic training really does, that we are able to kind of kick down the door and say, we are a medical and allied healthcare, profession that is fully capable of bringing all of this stuff to the table, utilize us, use us in these non-traditional roles, and let's really, open that up for everybody.
Awesome.
Cool.
Anything else you wanted to share?
I didn't have anything specific, no.
If you want, you're kind of like dark on the interwebs, but if people wanted to find you, did you have any contact information?
I am kind of dark on the interwebs. I do have Facebook, although I don't respond to Facebook Messenger or anything like that, and I couldn't tell you the last time I posted anything.
Sweet.
I actually get yelled at a lot at home. My wife gives me a hard time about not liking her posts and everything. So I don't even
no idea
really.
what that's like.
I don't even really do that much. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you under the bus, Aaron. But you can email me, cmwencl0269@gmail.com is my own personal email. Come straight to my phone. Don't have an Instagram. Don't have any other social media accounts. So. Yes, I'm a very old soul when it comes to that. So
there's nothing wrong with that, especially this day and age, I think. Awesome. Well, thanks, Corey.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Yeah.
Yep.